Leader of the federal Conservatives, Pierre Poilievre, is way ahead in the polls, which has left many Canadians wanting to know more about the man that could very well be the 24th Prime Minister of Canada after the next election. Luckily for Canadians who are wanting to know more, a new biography has been published about Mr. Poilievre by best-selling author Andrew Lawton, senior journalist at True North and host of The Andrew Lawton Show, who spoke to dozens of people in Mr. Poilievre's entourage. The book, Pierre Poilievre, A Political Life, gives Canadians a look at Mr. Poilievre's journey from his early years to leader of the opposition. Mr. Lawton's newest book tells the story of a politician who has been carefully planning his path to become Canada's Prime Minister since he was a teenager, and it depicts him as a radically authentic yet intensely calculating individual. Joining us now to discuss the book is Andrew Lawton himself. Andrew, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Theresa. It's great to be with you.
This is now your second full-length book. What inspired you to write a biography about Mr. Poilievre?
I think when we saw during the leadership race, Pierre Poilievre hold these massive events across the country, thousands of people coming out to see him, it was clear that there was something very unique about him as a political figure. And as he became the leader and we saw a lot of that momentum continue, I felt, listen, how many Canadians really know this man? And that was what really motivated me to dig in and try to tell the story of how he got here and use that as a bit of an illustration of what he's likely to do in the future if he forms government and becomes Prime Minister.
And what about Pierre's early years? What is something that your readers might not know about his childhood?
Well, one is that he was very much a political nerd from a young age. He embraced politics as early as 14, starting to tag along with his mother to political events. And while other kids were reading books that were probably more popular, he was reading Milton Friedman and Ayn Rand and all of these folks. But before then, it was that he had a very ordinary childhood. He was really interested in wrestling. His dad once built a full-size wrestling ring in their front yard that Pierre and his friends used. And he was, of course, from Calgary, which had the famous Hart wrestling family that he had a small familial connection to. But it was just interesting just seeing how ordinary he was. And then, of course, that path changes as he gets interested in politics and starts to become the Pierre Poilievre that we see.
And can you walk us through Pierre's rise through politics to become the leader of the Conservatives?
Yeah, there was a combination of hard work and good timing. He came of age when the conservative movement in the country was going through a lot of changes. You had the Reform Party in the 80s and 90s, and then the Canadian Alliance Party. And in the early 2000s, the Canadian Alliance merged with the PCs to become the modern Conservative Party of Canada. And Pierre Poilievre was involved in every step of that journey. And when he first ran for office, it was 2004, that first election that the Conservative Party ever contested. So there was certainly some good timing there, but he also did a lot of his work in the trenches and really tried to shape that modern conservative movement into what it is today. And one of the central theses of the book, if you will, was that he both helped forge and himself was influenced by that modern conservative movement coming into fruition.
And what about his marriage? Do you profile his marriage in your book at all?
Yes, I mean, I was clear early on when I started writing this that you can't tell the story of Pierre without telling the story of his relationship with his wife, Anna. She's not just been a partner in his life and the mother of his children, but she's also been a tremendous force on the campaign trail. Canadians have heard her talking about her background as a Venezuelan immigrant to Canada and the ethics and values that brings. So I talk about how they met and the early days of their relationship and how they eloped to Portugal. And it's one of the few non-political parts of the book, but I think it's still interesting in helping really craft that portrait of who Pierre Poilievre and who Anna are.
And what has been the response to your book so far?
Well, it just officially came out this week, but I know some early copies have circulated. People have been very, very kind with their words about it. Obviously, there are some people that don't like Pierre Poilievre, and that's fine. But the book isn't meant to be a promotional piece. It's meant to be a fairly fair and balanced look at him. So I do think there's something in it for everyone.
Andrew, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Theresa.